Hello, everyone. My name is Lauren, and I'm finally deciding to share my testimony. And the reason for doing this is honestly for selfish and selfless reasons. It's been a long time coming since I decided to speak out, share, my truths, and I encourage everyone, to do so. Everybody has a story, and everybody should be heard and understood. And I'm just gonna go with the flow on this. Like, if you see me look down, it's because I have a few things that I've listed, but I want it to be as authentic and genuine as possible because I want you to understand and see who I am, how I've been brought up, things of that nature, who I am, where I come from. Um, that sets the foundation of who I am today. And so I do hope that well, I know for a fact that this is going to be, therapeutic for me, but I hope also by sharing my story and my testimony that I give someone else the courage to speak out and tell their truth because everybody does deserve to be heard and understood. And so, a little about me. I always start by saying I'm originally from Queens, New York. Um, I am a New York City chick at heart. Um, but the thing about that is, I also am an empath. I'm very empathetic. I consider myself to be an introvert, if you will. I think another reason why it took me so long to kind of share my story. Another thing is, I noticed that, for some people who are not outspoken, depending on who you are, I find that people want to tell your story. And usually, with that, is it turns out to be a bad game of telephone, if you will, because they don't always, get the right message or receive the right message. And so it's important for everyone, if you feel the need to be heard and understood, to go ahead and do that um, because it will set the tone and actually possibly regulate, some things within your life and also how you're perceived by others. And so, like I said, originally from New York City. I'm the only child, an only child. Now I'm 33 years old, but I always like to say I'm an only child. I usually soft spoken, keep to myself. At the same time, I tend not to rely on the zodiac that much, but I am a Leo. My birthday is July 31st, so if you want to incorporate or incorporate those characteristics as well to my personality, I'll own that and I'll be accountable towards that. So, bottom line is, I stay to myself, but if you, go out your way to provoke the lioness within me, I do feel there are also consequences for that. But at the end of the day, like I'm not a violent person or whatever the case may be. Um, And I think some people definitely want to try you in regards to that to see what buttons they can push or what have you. But, a little bit about, my story, my values. I do value honesty and integrity. Um, and also, um, I'm laughing. I'm thinking to myself because I am a certified anger management counselor. I am a master level clinical social worker. So, I try very hard to, uphold that, but at the end of the day, I am human. So sometimes I'm the counselor and sometimes I'm the client. It depends on what type of day it is, but, you know, I still tend to use that to, relate to others. And I believe that that is important. I don't ever think that I'm better than someone or that I have like certain skills or educations that other people cannot obtain or acquire for themselves. So um, I will consider myself to be a leader. I do consider myself to be a leader, but it's usually the leader that's within the crowd and not above or in front of the crowd, if you will, if that makes sense. I like to get in the front lines or the trenches, if you will, with other people, so to speak. So that's a little bit of who I am. Um, been private school, Catholic school all of my life. So um, at first I couldn't stand it. I hated it, but I do, in some ways thank my parents for it. They spent a lot of money and invested in, my education and, who I am today. So I do want to give them credit, for that. Um, but, on a personal note, as I'm, an adult now and got to see the world from my perspective and did my research, I personally feel that it took me 2 degrees to realize that probably didn't even need it at this point, when it comes to, work or association with people. My mother did say it's not always what you know, but who you know. And I find that to be the truth, as I'm an adult. Um, so this first video is just, it's going to be a ramble, if you will. Y'all can speed it up at any point in time that y'all want, but I'm doing this for myself and I'm doing this for others. Um, so, you know, what I want to accomplish within myself and out of life is just to be someone who is heard and understood, to be someone who is valued. Um, on a personal note, I did not always, value myself. Um, I do have, I did have, low self esteem, and if you will, and there's a lot of things that come with having low self esteem that I had to get away from, to make my life a little bit better and to make my life better for the life that I brought into this world by the grace of God. And she's also the reason why I'm doing this as well, because you're going to hear it from the source. I typically don't like when people want to, once again, tell your story for you or your truth for you, especially when you're not around to defend yourself, if you will. And as we go along, I'll get into that probably in another post, another video, if you will. Um, so I just want to be a good, person for myself, a good role model for my daughter. I'm not perfect by any means, but I do believe that everything happens for a reason, and there are things that you encounter and go about in your life that, build you up to making you the person that you are today. So, um, I'm looking down because I'm getting nervous, but I'm not going to do any more cuts. Like this is the real, deal, if you will. Um, I don't know if I mentioned, I probably did mention that I'm a certified anger management counselor, but to some, based on perspective, I will be viewed as being angry or being militant, if you will. Um, I'm not gonna lie, whatever you consider to be militant, fine. I'll own that. I'll take that. I remember growing up, I used to write poetry, and my dad, God rest his soul, he used to read my poetry, and when I was like 10 or 11, be like, why are you so angry? You go to Catholic school, you go to private school, like, why are you so angry? And I think deep down it's because I knew that there were some things going on in the world that didn't sit right with my soul or my spirit, even at a young age. And I couldn't put a name to it, or couldn't identify it, or I couldn't throw the DSM book at it. So I didn't know why I was feeling the way I was feeling. I just knew that things weren't right and things weren't fair, if you will. And so um, that also had a lot to do with, values that I grew up with, or values that my parents instilled in me, especially my dad, who was also a clinical social worker. Um, he taught me about integrity and honesty and things of that nature, and doing the right thing when nobody's looking and things like that. And so when inside my house it was cool, but then when I would leave, I would get you know confronted by people, places, or things that didn't match the values that I grew up with, or even the values that society put out based on what you saw going on in the world. And I'm like, well, something ain't right, because we supposed to love one another, respect one another, da 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 da. And you go out and see people harming each other, killing each other, defaming people's character, things of that nature. And it just made me upset, because I'm like, well, what the hell? Like, And so I struggled with that for a long, long, long time. Um, it did build up trust issues. It did build up, resentment and things like that. But it took me a while to learn that, despite all of that, you have to stand by your truth and live by your goals and values no matter what's going on around you. And I will admit that I allowed my outside world to influence or kind of shake the inside or the core of who I am. And maybe that's another reason why I did take up, social work and things like that, because I wanted to understand, human behavior in a social environment and why people did what they did. And still to this day, um, I know why, or I may have an idea why, but it still is like, well, why? Like, I still, understanding, like, let me tell you something, logic and feeling is like oil and water for me. It doesn't mix. It can stay in the same cup, if you will, but one is always going to be on top of the other, for me. And, so I had to, learn that and, struggle with that. So, it just is what it is. But, um, I will say that with me being upset or angry about the way society was or the way things were, within my life, once again, it brought on grounds for resentment. But because of that, I engaged in a lot of things that most people would consider addictive, if you will. I remember telling, social workers or counselors that I had to utilize. On a side note, if you're doing any type of mental health counseling, advocacy, help for, other people, whether it be on a direct practice or a macro practice, I strongly encourage that you also confide in someone, a licensed professional, things like that, to kind of honestly dump this stuff on, for lack of a better term, because you have to empty your cup in this field in order to be a conduit and a vessel for others. So I take pride in the fact that I, engaged in speaking with other people. But with that being said, I told, one of my counselors along the way that I'm going to write a book one day entitled Chasing Dopamine, because it's something that I wanted to do to make myself feel better because of what I viewed or experienced and seen around me. Um, I am a survivor of domestic violence. I am a survivor of sexual assault and abuse, things of that nature. Um, I don't like to use the word victim because it has a kind of a negative connotation. So I tend to use the word survivor because I'm still here, I'm still standing, and I still, you know, taking what I know, what I've experienced, and do my best to help others along the way. So that's what it's all about. And I've been down for a very long time, if you will, still going to work, still doing what I have to do, but still kept that door closed when I got home and cried or engaged in, marijuana use, or, you know, I had, multiple partners being promiscuous, things like that, um, because of wanting to fill a void, so to speak. Um, my household, it was always understood that there was a higher power. We didn't really speak on it too much, in terms of my being from a Christian household. Now I went to Catholic school, and I'm gonna use I statements. That was a little bit interesting, experience for me. But I always consider myself to be a Christian or a believer in Christ. Um, my grandmother, God rest her soul, um, she made us get baptized when we were 12. Well, when I was 12, considering like myself and my cousins and things of that nature, we all got baptized. And I did it for her, with the understanding of the fear of God to the best of my ability. I also got baptized again when I was 25. That was after developing a relationship with God, on my own and throughout my life, and you know just coming to him again with the understanding of wanting to give my life over to Christ once again. Um, so yeah, I did that for me. Um, but once again, I'm not perfect by any means. Even with my belief in God, I was angry and resented God because I guess like I saw my higher power as a Santa Claus, if you will, or a genie. And that's not the right way to think about it, in terms of me and my life. I always thought that, if I did good things and I did good work and I was a certain type of person, that I would be rewarded automatically. And in my life, I've seen that because I try to do good, or because I consider myself to be a good person, if you will, that people tend to take advantage of that. People tend to take your kindness for weakness and things like that. Or, oh, let me see what I can get out of this person, because they know your personality. They know what you will do and what you won't do, and people tend to use that to their advantage. And that's pretty sucky, if you will, for lack of a better phrase, but it is what it is. And that happened a lot throughout my life by family, friends, so-called friends, associates, co-workers, whatever the case may be. And because I didn't use an outlet properly, it made me an angry person. It made me a resentful person. And that was displayed in my actions. So, yeah. So, along the way, I just had to correct that. So, with that being said, people always say don't allow anybody to bring you out of character or things like that. That is very true. And I commend the people that can put on a poker face and just go about life like just dodging those bullets, if you will, from people, places, things, whatever the case may be. But as for me, like I wore my heart on my sleeve, and I still do. And so it was just a little bit harder for me to kind of fake the funk in that aspect. Like, if you hurt me, like it showed, it was known. And as a result, I kind of engaged in self-destructive behaviors. And, you know, it just is what it is. But with that, I distracted myself through kind of being an advocate for others, kind of helping others, hearing their story along the way. And I do believe that made me a phenomenal professional in the field. But at the end of the day, in my personal life, everything was kind of crumbling around me, which I thought because I was putting on a facade, you know. So that doesn't work all the time. But it's, October 3rd, if you will. I don't know when I'm going to put this out. Hopefully I can put it out as soon as possible. But being that it's October 2018, once again, it's been a long time coming that I share my story. And I do hope that I can help someone else along the way. Don't be afraid to tell your truth. Don't be afraid to tell your story because it's your truth, it's your story, and nobody has the right to tell you otherwise. Um, Based on what you say, a lot of people like to throw the mental health thing out there, like to throw the emotional health out there, and you take it with a grain of salt, but don't allow anybody to intimidate you or prevent you from getting healthy the best way possible. So I will say that um, I take a lot of pride in what I do as a professional, but I do believe that I will help someone along the way if I do share, some aspects about my personal life. And I'm actually taking a leap because in anger management, and I'll give respect where respect and credit is due. So shout out to, Laura Moss and Dr. Rich Pfeiffer because I've utilized their anger management book and also received supervision from Laura Moss to become certified on my own as an anger management counselor. So I can professionally do that, and give you a certificate and all of that. Um, but before I, get back into that realm, I do have to empty my cup, so to speak, with some things that have gone on in my personal life. And so this is just the beginning. This is just a little test in terms of my testimony. Um, so I will end it here. But what you will expect from me is some things that I've experienced in my professional life and my personal life. Um, Decisions I decided to make as late as this year in regards to who I am, what I value, and how I wish to be viewed by others. So this is just a start, and I do want to thank you for tuning in, if you will. So I'll say peace for now.